So how is everybody? Good, cool, me too. We have a very special guest with us today. This is my mother, Audrey.
Hi, everybody.
Mom, class, mom. So my lecture today is on what happens next, basically. Where it's on your elevator pitches, your executive summary. What do you do? What do you do to go out and actually get people interested in your company, get funding, once you've done all the rest of the tasks that we've talked about in here this semester? So, you want business plans with sales substance in them. So I've adopted a lecture from someone else here. He has a great cartoon of how you do want to do things and focus on sales substance in your business plan rather than sales hype, which is cartoon number 2 here. Questions your business plan must address. Where is the company now? What is your product or service? What is your market? How will you reach the market? Who will you be competing against? How will your product be produced? Who are the people that are involved with the company? What are your financial projections? How much money will you need? And what are the risks? So, things that everybody needs to know about your business when you're pitching it. Of what use is a business plan? Well, it's the basis for convincing yourself and others of the underlying logic of your opportunity. It's a compass to use to guide your way as you continue to move forward with the business. And, venture capitalists need to have one on file to signal competence to their funders. You need to have competitors. There's sometimes when you're creating a new venture or working on a small business, you think you have no competition because we're just that clever. If you don't have any competition, then either there's no market or you haven't done enough background investigation. Identify your competitors and profile them. What can they do that? But what can you do that they can't, and what can they do that you can't? The status quo is competition. Competition is always there. If you don't know who your competitors are, then you need to find out. You need to keep odds in mind. Out of 2,000 business plans, 200 are moderately creditable, usually. 100 are interesting enough to read. 40 actually undergo due diligence. 10 get money, and 1 actually makes money. So realize that it's a numbers game for your investors and contacts out there that you're pitching the business to. Investors read executive summaries, not business plans. So a good executive summary captures the reader's interest and imagination, conveys a clear picture of what you're trying to do, highlights salient features of the proposition, establishes the management team's credentials right away at the outset, and encapsulates a financial opportunity and key projections. And then, thus, persuades the reader to keep reading with the rest of the business plan. So the key to your whole pitch to people is the executive summary. You also need a mantra. It's sort of 2-sentence maximum description of what do we do and why should you care. What is it that the company does, and so what? Why is it a big deal? 2 sentences. In general, this is actually an interesting Interesting rule for myself as well as a professor doing projections with PowerPoint. In general, whenever you're doing a presentation with PowerPoint, you want 10 slides, you want it to go 20 minutes, and you want to use 30 point or above font. Anything smaller than that is hard for people to read. Anything more than 20 minutes is too long for people to pay attention to. And in general, anything more than 10 slides within 20 minutes is too many slides to bombard people with. So, in general, I've stuck to that with a lot of my lectures, but they end up being too short. So I've added more slides today to make sure that we have enough material to go over. 10 slides for a business plan pitch in a nutshell. The title slide, you've got a slide on the problem, a slide about the solution, a slide about your business model, a slide about underlying logic or underlying magic. What is it that's the secret sauce of the company? One slide about marketing and sales, one slide about competition, one slide about the management team, one slide about financial projections and key metrics, and then one slide about the current status of the business. What are the next milestones? What is the timeline to get to those milestones, and what is the use of capital going to be for the money you're asking for? Backers want to know why something works. So as an example, $30 printer cartridges from Hewlett-Packard. Printer ink is priced like oil. It's really expensive, and showing people, for example, if your business was printer cartridge ink, showing people just how expensive the main cartridges are and how cheap it can be from your business instead of the normal way is a good graphic way of exemplifying how things work and why the business works. Investors also want to consider why things won't work. So if you look at different Segway options or personal transportation options, and then you pull out a price tag of something like $49.95, it tends to worry investors that this doesn't seem like much value considering the price. Deals tend to fall apart because of divergent value expectations. So the law of valuation, entrepreneurs always tend to place higher value on what they do because they love it so much. Investors always tend to place a lower value on what entrepreneurs do because they're looking for a decent return, and they're cognizant of all the risks involved. Valuation in perspective. Value is created when you satisfy burning customer needs better than anyone else. It has much less to do with number crunching, spreadsheets, and sophisticated financial engineering. You need to ask yourself, what value are you creating? Do you have something that you can claim exclusive rights over that actually works like you say it does, that's in demand, that can be exploited, and that is scalable and profitable? If you do, you've got something to talk about. Ask yourself, what value has already been created? Do you have patentable claims of some kind? Do you have a working prototype? Do you have paying customers? Very important. Do you have a competitive advantage, and do you have a scalable and efficient business model? In the absence of any of that, what is the value? You need to be able to demonstrate concrete value to your investors and to people you're networking with about the business. So if you don't have any of that concrete value, in essence, you're trying to put a value on unknowns or thin air, and as we all know, air is a free good, and as such, the value of thin air is zero. So if you can't quantify the value that you've created, then you basically have no value. You need to be able to quantify what the value is that the business is creating. Implications of this: if outsiders see the value as zero, you have little choice but to prove yourself by yourself and not have any investors. Financing yourself or bootstrapping on matters that boost valuation. Don't obsess with spreadsheet modeling. Just get out and see if it sells. That's much more important than spending too much time on financial projections. Just get out there and see if there's customers that are willing to buy the product. I told you guys at the beginning of the class that one of the jobs that I had was at an internet.com in Internet 1.0, music.com, and it was an interesting time. It was an interesting world at that time, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. You can see this Dilbert commercial here, a cartoon here, with venture capitalists wanting to invest in Wally's web-based business, and Wally says, "I don't own a web-based business. I'm just an engineer with cool potential." And they say, "That's enough for us." At that time, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, investors were throwing at money at untested ideas, unproven management teams, demonstrably unprofitable business models, people with measurable pulses, and people who uttered magic words like music and .com in the same sentence. It was a crazy time. $50 million valuation in 2007 or now 2017. Individuals who have successfully built up a number of entrepreneurial ventures that grew in leaps and bounds and produced enormous wealth for themselves, their partners, employees, and investors in the process. So a lot more difficult. You need to have been there and done that in order to get a decent valuation for your company these days. Some prudent valuation advice. Start with the assumption that your idea's value is zero. Valuation is created by tangibly demonstrating something. So you have to demonstrate that you have something worth protecting, like a patent. You have to demonstrate that you have something to sell, a prototype. Demonstrate that you have recruited others to buy into your vision. Demonstrate that you have sold something and that customers buy in. Demonstrate that you have a track record. You're able to show financial statements and projections, not just projections. So you want to be able to show what you have done financially, not what we will do financially. And then you need to over-deliver and exceed expectations. The milestone valuation method. You want to break your project up into digestible bits. So first thing, investigating and filing a patent. Second thing, developing a working prototype. Third thing, securing a pilot customer. Fourth thing, development of a go-to-market product. So instead of the prototype, a product you can actually sell to multiple customers. Signing up X number of distributors and opening up X number of foreign offices as examples of digestible bits and steps that you can take along the way. Each bit needs to address technology, market, or people risk, and preferably all three at once. Valuation working backwards. What magnitude of capital is required for your project to really fly? Is it 50 million? Well, this presentation that I'm using was originally a European audience, so everything is listed in euros instead of dollars. But 50 million euros, 10 million, 5 million, 1 million, half a million or less. How much money do you really need? If your project needs 50 million bucks, you should plan on the the entrepreneur's stake being 10% or less. If you need less than 500 million, or if you need less than $500,000, then you want to keep 90% of your equity in your company. So along the range there, you should expect to have to give up increasingly more of your company as you get more money in return. Why is this? Well, growth requires capital, and capital requires return. So early financiers of your company are typically you, friends and family, and public sector bodies. Business angels and venture capital funds want to see proof of concept, proof of market, scalability, and prospects of return. Angel investors tend to invest their own money and expertise early on in the business. They want to see a 5 times return on capital between 5 to 7 years out, and they usually invest with friends and colleagues of theirs up to $500,000 for a minority stake, so less than 50%. Which basically means $500,000 for 25% of your firm has to create a business worth $12 million in 5 to 7 years' time. So that's pretty aggressive growth that you need to be able to hit in order to realistically get angel investment money. Venture capitalists, even more difficult. They invest other people's money later on in the process. They want to see a 5-time return on capital between 3 to 5 years out, which means, and they typically invest $5 million or so and get a majority stake in the business, over 50%. So that would mean that $5 million for 50% of the firm has to create a business worth $50 million within 3 to 5 years' time. Very, very aggressive growth horizon. Non-disclosure agreements. Few investors actually agree to sign them. Never ask them to sign one when you have a very first meeting. Never ask if you want to discuss the idea. You should circulate an executive summary and a PowerPoint pitch, but freely, but do not reveal the secret magic sauce of the true proprietary information. Don't release that in your executive summary. If the investor wants to talk about the proprietary information you have, then insist upon a non-disclosure agreement. And it's important to remember that the best protection for an idea is superb implementation of it, and perhaps a patent. So regardless of how worried you are that someone else may steal your idea, the best way to keep it from being stolen is to do a really good job of implementing it yourself. Not necessarily to hide it from everybody, but to just do a good job of implementing. So the capital pyramid. There's a number of different types of money out there that you could theoretically access. Prospector funds, so these are things like government grants, employers, foundations. Personal funds, professional funds like business angels, venture capital funds, and banks, and then finally public equity funding. You'll see that the type of capital as you go from starting up your business to being a mature business, and the amount of risk involved are sort of inversely coordinated. When you very first start up your company, you're going to have friends, basically founder, family, friends, and fools. Those are your main sources of money when you first start the company. After that, business angels come into question, and then venture capital firms come into question. Around that same time, commercial banks come into question too, but they loan money they loan money rather than invest equity money, and thus take a lot lower risk. And then finally, as you get more mature, you've got corporate money and private equity markets. You want to master frugality, if possible, when you're starting out with your business. Never buy what could be bought secondhand. Never buy new what you could buy secondhand. Never buy what you could rent. Never rent what you can borrow. Never borrow what you can beg. And never beg what can be salvaged. So basically, you want to find the cheapest possible way of doing everything possible. You want to build your business with prudence as well. So focus on core competence and outsource the rest. Avoid the temptation of going to market too early. Wait until some of the clouds and confusion lift. Develop a prototype to test out with beta customers and to show to venture capitalists. Very, very important to have a prototype. And look for underserved markets. Prospector funds. Entrepreneurs often start their businesses in the back of market research, which is bought from their employer, basically. So a lot of times you'll be working for someone else, but have the opportunity to sort of work on your own business as you're doing your job. That is one of the first ways that a lot of people start businesses. There are also myriad grants, foundations, and funding bodies, like we talked about last week, that fund prototypes, patents, and business development in general. You need, in order to access prospector funds, you need to understand who to approach, how to approach them, what they want to hear, and what the magic words are, in addition to please. The magic words could be a particular type of technology or a particular population that's being served by a government grant. There's usually some magic words involved in getting grant money. In general, the quality of tactical advice provided by these funds is highly variable, and ideally you want no strings attached, no hassles, forms, or involvement in any way. If you're getting grant money, if you're getting free money, you want it to come with no strings attached, rather than with a lot of advice and counsel. For personal funds that you use to start up your business, golden rules to keep in mind: you need to show other people your belief in the business by giving until it hurts, or at least until it hurts somewhat. In the absence of personal capital, sweat equity, or working on the business will do. Your sacrifices have to be made before you approach investors. You need to project a startup personal lifestyle, which means that you're not spending lavishly. And spouses and partners need to be 100% supportive. If you're not on the same page with your significant other about starting a business, it's going to generate a lot of problems and conflict as things go forward. Friend, family, and fool investors. Friends and family that know you are your largest source of capital next to personal funds. If you use them, prepare to lose them. So the money may come between you, and it may cost you a friendship if you do end up using friends for investing in your business. Do not get them involved in the business unless they have the experience that actually warrants being involved. Prepare the divorce papers in advance. Like, make sure that you know how you're going to go your separate ways again. Makes it a lot easier to actually get involved with people's money, and then get them uninvolved again later on if you already have a clear picture of how you're going to separate when you go into things. And then ideally, you want silent partners. You don't want friends and family who are giving you a lot of advice on how to do things. You just want them to invest their money and be happy, basically. Professional funds, grants, soft money, personal funds, and capital provided by friends, family, and fools is the bedrock to raise outside capital. Early on, many entrepreneurs view the bank as the next logical port of call. In fact, business angels are the only viable and valuable route in the early stages, not banks. Banks are only come in later on in the process. Angels have been around for a long time and have been involved in some pretty big successes. Bell Telephone, way back in the late 1800s, was originally funded by angel investors. Ford Motor Company was originally funded by some angel investment. Apple Computers, Amazon, and then there's some notable angels that I've listed below there as well. Typical profile of an angel investor tends to be a middle-aged male, has reasonable net worth and income, has new venture experience. They've been involved in either starting or managing a small business before themselves. They typically invest only in about one deal a year. They usually invest close to home, so literally geographically they're investing in businesses which are close to the community they live in. They usually invest as part of a group or a syndicate of several partners. They invest small and they invest early, and they leverage and have exit appeal. Yes?
What would be the difference between an angel and a shark?
A shark is an angel is a shark is a not nice angel. It's there's not a big difference between the two. Sharks are angels. Like if we drew a Venn diagram, not all angels are sharks, but all sharks are angels. So sharks are investors who may not have your best interest in mind when they come to you about investing in your business, but they still are considered angel investors. Does that make sense, Jose? Okay. So by some estimates, there's 2 million or more business angels in the United States. They invest over $100 billion a year, and they invest in about 40,000 new ventures each year. And there's lesser numbers in the UK as well. How do they hear about opportunities? Well, the angel investor world is described as a reveal and referral market. Usually they get referrals from people that they've invested with before, business associates, personal friends, or business introduction services. And many investors also actively search out investment opportunities. So that's how angels usually find out about your business. Business angels are not charity. They seek capital gains on invested capital. They want an exit in a reasonable time frame, which means 5 to 7 years, more or less. They want to be involved in situations that can benefit from leveraging their experience and contacts. So as opposed to friends and family or grant investment sources, the angels are going to be involved in giving you advice, and they're going to be involved in helping to run your company with you. Sometimes they just like to relive the entrepreneurial dream again and have the excitement of being back in ventures. And a lot of times they don't have to invest. They invest because they want to. So investment criteria for angel investors. There are many parallels between private investing and betting on horses. To make money, you need to assess the condition of the track or the industry in the case of investments, the horse or the strategy, and the jockey or the people involved in the company. And experienced punters who are not sure whether a venture will work or not will usually bet on the people before anything. Why are angel investors actively involved? Well, it's their kids' inheritance on the line. Businesses can genuinely benefit from their experience as well as their capital. They have the time. They're usually retired and have already been successful with their own ventures, so they have the time to be involved, unlike many venture capital fund managers who are busy managing their funds. And entrepreneurs generally appreciate the help. So it's it's an invisible market. It's often been described as a giant game of hide and seek where everyone is playing blindfolded. It's hard to find angels sometimes. I mean, there are lists of angel investors like I showed you last week, but a lot of times there's a lot of angels out there who are not listed with an angel investment group. So in order to locate them, use your personal network, talk to entrepreneurs who have successfully raised money in the past, go through business angel matching services, kind of like the stuff we talked about last week, and use specialized publications that talk about angel investors, who they are and where they are. A typical angel deal. Management invests $70,000 and retains 53% of the business. Outside investors invest $320,000. 70% of the deals are early stage. 70% involve syndicates or groups of angels that invest together. 40% of investors are employed in some capacity in the business. Almost all of these are located within an hour of the home of the investor, and almost all are documented with a contract of some kind. So contracts, things that are non-negotiable in a contract that you end up signing with an investor. Veto rights over acquisitions or divestment. Investor approval of strategic plans and budget. Share option issuance restrictions. Non-compete contracts and restrictions on the ability to raise additional debt or equity finance. Those are not negotiable. They're going to be part of your contract with investors, and that's because the investors want to protect their valuation. Things that are negotiable in a angel investor contract: forced exit provisions, investor approval for hiring and firing decisions, investors who need to co-sign checks. You don't necessarily have to have your investors co-sign the checks. That's negotiable. Management equity ratchets and dispute resolution mechanisms. It is possible to negotiate those things so that management is actually able to manage the company and doesn't have too much involvement or interference from the angels. Additional insights. More experienced business angels behave more like venture capitalists. Syndicates, so the larger the group of angels is, the thicker the contract tends to be. Trusted referrers shape the deal in favorable ways. So if you've been referred to an angel through a mutual friend or associate, it tends to be a more favorable deal for all parties involved. And defining roles is the true value of the contract. It's not really an enforceable legal document. Like contracts that you end up signing with angel investors are not necessarily ironclad legally. They're more important for defining who does what and making sure that everybody's on the same page, rather than as some kind of guarantee or security. Venture capital. Visible, but are they accessible? Every country has an online directory of venture capital funds. Investment focus, so what stage, sector, and size they invest on, partner names, investee companies, office locations. It's easy to identify them, but it's not always easy to approach them. You need referrals to get in the door with venture capitalists a lot of times. Unlike business angels, venture capitalists need to invest. They're the custodians of other people's money. They typically have not been entrepreneurs before, and they invest bigger amounts at later stages in development. However, similar to business angels, they also need to see a growth story. They want to be able to visualize their exit, and they want to reap value by way of capital gains. More formalized. It's a more formalized ritual of raising money than is the case with business and angels. Venture capitalists want to see a detailed business plan. They follow a well-developed investment screening process. They will undertake extensive due diligence in doing background research on your business. They will consult with outside experts. They will document everything in contracts, and they will go out of their way to protect their own downside risk. So the game has become one of managing ever-increasing amounts of capital, and venture capitalists basically have other people invest money in a fund, and then they take that fund and go out and invest in individual businesses. And as the fund gets bigger and bigger, the bureaucracy and rules and structure involved with that process get more and more intense. Venture capital in the U.S. There's about $370 billion of capital under management in the U.S., 75% of which has been raised since the turn of the century. There's about 500 venture capital funds in the U.S. There's a growing number of more than billion-dollar funds. 30% of all those investments tend to be in Silicon Valley. There's a $100 billion capital overhang, and many funds are returning capital to limited partners. Differences between venture capitalists and angels. From a personal standpoint, business angels are former entrepreneurs. Venture capitalists are investors. The kinds of firms they fund, business angels tend to fund small, early-stage ventures. Venture capitalists tend to fund large, more mature businesses. In terms of the due diligence or the research that they do on the companies they invest in, business angels do pretty minimal due diligence and research. Venture capitalists do extensive research. Where they're located, business angels tend to invest close to home. Venture capitalists, it's not really important where you're located. Contract-wise, business angel contracts are simple. Venture capitalist contracts are quite comprehensive. Monitoring is active and hands-on for business angels, more strategic for venture capitalists. Exit and return on investment are of lesser concern for business angels, but are highly important for venture capitalists. So, don't be afraid to try. And you've got an example here of somebody selling beers for $2, but a porta potty for $25 on a golf course. Don't be afraid to try, but be prepared for setbacks. And you'll see here how Spike, Snoopy's cousin, had grand dreams of having a gondola business, but realized after a while that it just wasn't going to make it having a gondola in the middle of the desert. So when it comes to going out and pitching your business to investors, don't be afraid. Get out there, give it your best shot, but be prepared for things to be a bumpy road. And that is the end of my lecture for today. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, get out of here, and I'll see you on Wednesday.